Hello, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So today we're going to look at the critical path analysis. Okay. So this is going to be a mini series to discuss the critical path method, how to create a critical path for your program, for a mini program or a big program. Let's just give you the concept. Okay. So in this series, we'll be exploring a few essential topics that will help you to understand how to use CPM in your project management endeavors. Okay, so it's going to be probably 2 or 3 or 4 videos for this series. So the first part of the video, will be generating a critical path by conducting a forward pass and a backward pass in our network logic for this set of activities that we can see on our screen. Activities A to L. Okay, so when we get the forward and backward paths, that will help us to generate our critical path in the for the program. Then we'll create Gantt chart. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Gantt chart, just to show the relationship between this set of activities. So we're gonna do that, and whilst we're calculating the critical path, I will introduce us to what we call free float and total float. Okay, so we'll discuss that along the line as well, because these terminologies, they're very, or this concept, I would say, they're very crucial for managing project scheduling and identifying project delays. Okay, so we'll discuss the terminologies and the definition later on. So almost at the end of this series, so what we're going to do is going to create a resource profile or resource diagram, and we generate our S curve as well for the program, which shows the cumulative values for different entities that we're measuring. Okay, and lastly, for this program, we'll give ourselves some scenarios, and we'll try to find out how to resolve over allocation of resources. Okay, which can become an issue in project management. And I hope that at the end of this series, you'll be able to get a valuable insight and some practical tips for using CPM in your project management endeavors. Okay, if you find this content helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more informative videos on project management and related topics. Okay, and if you're able to stay to the end of this video, I'm happy to give you a free book of my free copy of my book on how to supercharge your project management skills with CPM, which is a complete guide for you to find in your critical part in your project. So it's a good book. I wish you enjoy it, and I hope you're gonna enjoy it. So it's a free book, no trick, no catch at all. So let's jump into it. Okay. So we've got this set of activities A to L. Okay, so firstly, the first thing we need to do is to as you can see here, so activity here has got the duration. So the durations are in week, so you've got 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, like that. And here we've got the predecessors. So in this case now, as you can see, A and B has not got any predecessors, but the other activities have got predecessors. And like I mentioned earlier on, we're going to do something relating to resource allocation and resource profile S curves. So this will be very handy. So we'll get to this later. So ignore the resource section for now. So now let's just focus on activities A to L. Okay. So let me just draft something a little bit. Okay. So what we need to draft now is just to show the relationship. So we've got activity A. It's not got a predecessor, and this is activity B. Okay. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to see what the relationship between this activity is like. So for those who don't know, as I mentioned earlier on, there's something we call free float and total float. Okay, so free float is the number of time, the duration of time you can delay an activity without delaying the next activity. Okay, or the successor activity. Okay, While the total float is the duration of time you can delay an activity without delaying the end date of your project. So don't forget, free float is the next activity or the successor activity. Total float focuses on the end date of your project. Okay, so when you're doing your critical path analysis, any of those activities that's called a free float, or sorry, a total float of 0 will be on your critical path. So that's called critical path. Okay, so we're still going to get there. I'll show you how to do that, and the formula, I'll give you the formula, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so now, so we've got A and B, so we've got the first two activities. Yeah, so next activity is activity C, and activity C is dependent on A, so that means you have to finish A before you start C. Yeah, that's good. So next one is D, and dependent is C. So predecessor is what comes before it, and successor is what comes after. So in this case now, the predecessor is C. So activity D. Yeah. So let's go to E. E is dependent on B. Yeah, are we getting it? Good. Then the next one is F. F is dependent on E. Okay. G is dependent on E. So this is a tricky one. So you don't go from F now. So it's just E. So when you finish E, then you do G. Okay, is that clear? Yeah, good. So the next one is H. H is dependent on D. So that's H. And the next one is I. This is a tricky one. So I is dependent on both G and F. Okay, so G and F. So that's your I. Okay. Then J. J is dependent on I and H. So when you finish H and you finish I, that's when you do your J. Okay. Then K is dependent on I. So that's K. And L is dependent on J and K. Okay. So that's our last activity. So you see, so we've got different parts. So part 1, part 2. Okay. And this part 2 is divided into this part and this part. And this goes in here to give us the last to lead to the last activity. So now, so what we need to calculate now is what is going to be the duration of our program. So we want to know the length of our program. We know the individual duration of each activities, but when we create those links, we want to know the duration of our program by doing the forward pass, and also to calculate our critical path by doing a backward pass. So go forward, that's a forward pass, and go backward, that's a backward pass. So there's something that is essential to understand, which is the type of relationship and activities and activity can exhibit between each other. So we've got 4 types of relationship. The first one is finish to start. Finish to start. So that means in this case now, if you go activity A, activity B. So that means activity A must finish before activity B starts. Yeah? Okay? So you have to finish pouring concrete before you start curing. Yeah? Before the concrete starts curing. So that's the finish to start relationship. So another one is start to start. Okay? So that means when activity A starts, activity B can't start. Okay? They're starting at the same time. Alright? Okay? So in future videos, I will tell you more about lag, because they can have a start relationship and you have to add some lag. So that means A can start or B can start 2 days after A has started. Okay? So that's one way to look at it. So the next one, or the next type of relationship, is finish to finish. So what that means is that when activity A finishes, activity B would finish as well. Okay, they are finishing at the same time. Yeah, and this last one, which is start to finish. So this type of activity relationship is rare. Not that it is rare, but I will advise you to use it sparingly. Okay, so start to finish. So we're saying here, activity A can only start when activity B finishes. Okay, so that's quite weird. So this is actually being used when you are doing a backward planning. Yeah, backward planning. You're planning from the back in your project. Okay, because at the beginning of the project, in most cases, you've not got the entire information, so you're planning from the end deliverable. So you know what the end deliverable is, so you're doing a backward planning. It's also called rolling wave planning or progressive elaboration. You're elaborating the project progressively as soon as you have more information on the project. So you're doing a backward plan. By the time you know you've created a small program, then you can start, creating the right logic, like a finish to start relationship between these activities. Okay, so that's that. So I hope you understand. So that's the kind of relationship that could exhibit between all these activities. Okay, so good. So next thing now, we need to do it properly. Show the relationship, add the durations to it. Then there's something I would like to introduce you to, which is this table. This is how we're going to represent each of these activities. So activity A. Yeah. So this will be the duration. This is early start, early finish, late start, late finish. Okay, so early start is the earliest time we can start this activity, and D is the duration. This is the early finish, this is the late finish, this is the late start, and this is the earliest start. Okay, so you get all your early start and early finish when you're doing the forward pass. Okay, and you get your latest finish and latest start when you're doing your backward pass. Okay, so I'll show you how to get that. So what this means is that the earliest start is the earliest date you can start this activity A, and this LS, which is the latest start, is the latest time you can start that particular activity. Okay, so in terms of like total float and free float, so when we start calculating our total float, you will see that it will be the difference between the late finish and the early finish. Okay, so difference between the late finish minus early finish. So let's say this is 7 and this is 5. So if you subtract it, that's 2. So that's your total float. Yeah, but don't forget, the total float needs to be 0 for the activity to be on the critical path. Okay, in some cases, when you're using software like Microsoft Project or Primavera to plan your program, you might tend to have negative total float. The reason behind that is because probably you've got a constraint on your end date, or you are running behind schedule. That's why you have a negative total float. Okay, so we'll discuss that later on. So for your free float, like I mentioned to you earlier on, the free float is the amount of time you can delay an activity without delaying the next activity. Okay, so when you're calculating the free float formula, so it's actually the earliest start of the successor activity, minus the early finish of the current activity. Okay, current activity. So let's say there's another activity here, call it activity B. Yeah, so the earliest start of that activity minus the earliest finish of the current activity, which is activity A. That will give you your free floats, okay? So now, let's start plugging all this information in. So if you want, take a screenshot of this, yeah, or print it on a document, and I will also give you a link to the file in the description below, so you can download it and follow along, okay? So let's plug it in here. So you have your activity A. And you have your activity B. Okay? So yeah, so guys, so I will now transfer this to a proper template using the same logic that we followed. So I'll now transfer it in here. So now we have activity A, activity B, okay, activity C, activity D, okay, activity E is here, and H is here, activity F, G, I, J, K, L. All right. So now put the duration for each of those based on this table. Okay. So these durations in week. So you have 4, 2, 5, 6, 4, 8, 2, 3, 7, 6, 6. So guys, you have to make sure that this duration that we've added is actually correct, because if there's any error here, and that's why some of the my students are saying they're getting the wrong project duration. That's because the duration of input here is wrong one way or the other. So make sure you've got the actual duration. So now let's follow along, okay? So let's start with activity A, okay? So activity A, let's go for this duration. And don't forget, when we're doing it, click early start, early finish for our forward pass, and latest start and latest finish for backward pass. Okay, so let's do the forward pass now. So let's say this activity A starts at day 0, and let's go for this duration. That means it's finished on day 4. Okay, so activity B, activity C rather, the relationship in here is finish to start relationship. Yeah, so it can, when activity A finishes, it starts. So let's say it starts on day 4. Yeah, and it will finish on day 4 plus 4, that's day 8. Good. Then the same time of relationship here, this one starts on day 8 plus 2, that's 10. Okay, and this is quite easy. So 10, this starts on day 10 and finishes on day 15. So let's hold on there. So let's start with B, part B as well. So start from day 0, finishes on day 6. This one starts on day 6 plus 6, day 12. Yeah, E goes into F and E also go into G separately, individually, independently. Okay, so that means this starts on day 12 and finishes on day 19. That means G as well, that's day 12, starts on day 12 and finishes on day 15. Okay, now look at these two activities, F and G. So that means F and G needs to finish before you start I. So here, even though G finishes on week 15, yeah, but F doesn't finish until week 19. So which one's good? Yeah, so the latest one, so week 19. So I can only start when these two activities is finished. So, and the earliest finish date I would say is 19. So you put 19 here. Okay. So 19 plus 2, that's 21. So the same idea here happens here as well. Okay. You go high and H that needs to finish before you start J. Okay. And I finishes on week 21, and this finishes in week 15. So which one goes? Yeah, correct. 21. So 21 plus 6, that's 27. Okay. So K is just dependent on I. So that's 21 plus 8, that's 29. So in this case as well, L is dependent on J and K. So which one goes? 29. So 29 plus 4 is 33. So what this is saying that our project duration is 33 weeks. Okay. So later on in one of this series, we're going to plug all this information in a software called Primavera P6, and I'm hoping that we're going to get this duration as well. So this is just for us to understand when you press that schedule button in your P6 to know what's happening behind the scene in the twinkle of an eye. Okay. So now that we've gotten the duration of our project, okay, so the next thing we need to do, because all what we've done now is a forward pass. Yeah. So let's now do the backward pass. Okay. So now when we're doing the backward pass, so we're going to fill all these latest finish dates and latest finish starts. Okay. So this is a part of it. Yeah. So the latest equal finish is 33. So now subtract 4. That's 29. Okay. That's 29. 33, 29. So when you go into K, so K is also only dependent on L. So that's 29 minus 8, that's 21. Okay. J as well, that's 29 minus 6, that's what? 23. Okay. So in this case now, you've got J and K feeding into high. So when we're doing the forward pass, we're taking the highest duration in terms of week, yeah? Or highest date in terms of week, yeah? But now you take the lowest one and you're doing the backward pass, okay? So that means the latest finish, this for this one now, you've got 23 and 21. So what goes in here will be 21. Minus 2, 19. Okay, so I just go into G on its own, so that's 19 minus 3, that's 16. Okay, so when you're doing F is 19, so 19 minus 7, that's 12. Okay, so here you've got E, which fits into F and G, so you take the lowest one in this case, so that's 12 minus 6, that's 6. So here is just 1B, so 6 minus 6, 0. Let's complete this upper part. So here you've got 23. You've got 23. 23 goes in here. 23 minus 5, that's 18. So you got 18 here, minus 2, 16. Yeah. You got 16 here, minus 4, 12. You got 12 here, minus 4, 8. Okay. So now, let's calculate our total float. Don't forget, the total float is the latest finish minus early finish, or you can say latest start minus early start. Okay. So in this case now, let's take latest finish, this first formula. So when you subtract this minus this, that gives you 0. This minus this, 2. This minus this, yeah, 8. This minus this, 8. 16 minus 8, 8. 4, 12 minus 4, 8. this minus this 0, yeah. 21 minus 21 0, this minus this, yeah, 4, this minus this 0, this minus this 0, this minus this 0. So don't forget, like I mentioned earlier on, to get our critical part will be the part that's got 0 total float. Okay, so which activities? So we got activity B, it goes 0 total float, so that's B. Which one else? E. Then we'll go F. Then we'll go I, K, and the last one, L. So this is our part. That's our critical part. So it's this part, this, and this. Okay? Yes, that's our critical part. And to calculate our free float, like we mentioned earlier on, the free float is the duration of time you can delay an activity without delaying the next activity, which is the successor. Okay? And I told you the formula will be the earliest start date of the successor minus the earliest finish date of the predecessor. So in this case now, the free float here is 2. Yeah. In this case, if you subtract this minus this, is 6. Yeah. And this minus this, 0. Okay. So this minus this, 0. This minus this is 0. Yeah. There's something we call inferential float. You can see it happening here. That's for another discussion. Okay, but here you've got 6 days, 6 weeks of free float. What this means is that you can delay this activity A by 6 weeks without delaying activity J. Because in this case now, like we mentioned earlier on, this activity J is waiting for week 21 to start, for activity I to start. And activity H would have finished in week 15. So it's got 6 weeks to play around. So you can delay this activity H by 6 weeks before you start activity J without delaying the next activity. Okay? So what that means is that if this activity on the critical part is running slow, you can bring resources here for at least 6 weeks to help out, to avoid delaying the end date of your project, because any delay on these critical activities will delay your end date. Yeah, so that's why you need to know what your free float is. So what in this case as well, you've got the free float of 2, so that means you can delay activity J by 2 days without delaying the end date of your program. Yeah, so you do the same thing for this as well, to the calculation for the free float. Okay, so here guys, the parts are lighted in red. That's our critical part. Okay, so don't forget, so our critical part is P, E, F, I, K, and L. Okay, because they have a total float equals to 0. All right, and also you can find the free float of each activity to see how long you can delay those activity without delaying your end dates. Okay, so I hope this is clear. I hope we understand. So what we've covered so far, so we discussed the parts, so we discussed what the free float and total float is. So the end date, that's total float, is related to the end date here, and the free float is your next activity. And we're able to calculate what our critical part is, yeah, and we'll discuss about relationship. You finish to start, start to start, finish to finish, and start to finish. Okay, hope that's clear. We'll talk about the annotation that we have here: early start, early finish, late start, late finish. Okay, so and the formulas for calculating your total float and free float. I hope this is clear.